Okay, guys, last video of 11.1, and so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be solving for limits using algebra. So it's not going to be on a graph, and it's not going to be like the limit rules. There are going to be rules to it, but like I'm going to give you a function. You have to solve for the limit. Okay, and there's Neil deGrasse Tyson throwing some chemistry humor at you. Okay, let's go on to here. Okay, so there's three steps to, or well, there's like a three rule process here. Okay, so to find the limit algebraically, if it's one of these first two, well, if it's the first one, it's very easy. Okay, if it's the second one, it's a little more difficult. The third one, it's about the same as this one. It is a little more difficult, but none of it's real difficult. Okay, if you can memorize the process here. Okay, so here, let me show you an example of what we're going to be doing, and then I'll come back to this slide so we can go through what to do. Okay, so I got examples from the book for this section. Okay, so if you want to, you can look at how the book does it on 11.1, and they do it a little differently than me. Well, on some of them, most of them are the same. But here we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a function, okay, and it's going to tell you to find the limit at x equals as x approaches 5. Okay, so the first thing here is you always just plug the number in. Okay, just see if it works. If you get a number for the answer, that's the answer. Okay, and you're done. That's pretty simple. Okay, if that's the route you go, it's not bad at all. Okay, now but you ask like, well, what is not getting a number? Okay, so if you divide by 0, remember dividing by 0 is a big no-no in mathematics. You can't divide by 0. It's like saying I have 100 cookies and I have 0 people to split them amongst, and so you can't divide by 0 ever. Okay, so if you get anything divided by 0, that's when you're going to fall into one of these rules. This third rule here, that's going to be for, I think it's 11.3. So we're not doing that today. We will only be doing the second rule. Okay, so you plug in the number. If you get a number, that's your answer. If you get 0 divided by 0, then you have a hole. Okay, and remember that hole is like on those graphs that we were doing. It's like there's a hole missing out of the graph. Okay, and so when you plugged it in, it didn't give you an answer because there wasn't an answer to give you. There was a big missing part of the graph there. Okay, and so what we're gonna have to do to solve for it is we're gonna have to factor and cancel. The biggest problem I see with people is they don't remember how to factor. They have problems with factoring. So you can factor online. You can look up some factoring videos. I will show you how I factor on this video, and hopefully that'll help you out. Okay. And then after you factor and cancel stuff out, you just do the process again. You plug it in. If you get a number, that's your answer. And then if you don't get a number, that means you probably have something else going on, and then you need to factor and cancel again or go through it. You're not going to have any of those problems on this worksheet, okay? On this section. So let's go through. Let's do some problems here. Okay, so first thing, remember we just plug it in. Let's just see if it works, okay? So this is our function, and we're doing the limit as x approaches 5 of this function. Okay, so we're just going to plug in 5. See if that gives us anything. So we're going to do 5 squared plus 2 times 5 minus 9. And you're going to use a calculator, just check that out. Yeah, so let's see what this is. 5 squared is 25 times 4 is 100 plus 10. So that's going to be 110 minus 9. So I believe this should be 101. Okay, it gave us a number. That's the answer. It's nice and simple. There's nothing else to do there. And you know, before you plug that in real quick, just make sure I don't do something wrong, and then you're like, how in the world did you get 101? 4 times 5 squared plus 2 times 5 minus 9. And guys, I'm just plugging in on my calculator over here. It's 101. Okay, cool. So that's my answer. That's what it is. So let's go to another one. Okay, it's first step. You just plug it in. See if it works. So we're doing the limit as x approaches 5 of this function here. So we're going to plug in 5. So 5 over 5 plus 3, which is 5 over 8. That's a number. I mean, if you want to write it as a decimal, you can. 5 divided by 8 as a decimal is 0.625. So this is the same as 0.625, and that's my answer. I can write it as this one or that one. It doesn't really matter. But it gave me a number. That's it. I'm done. No reason to make it more difficult. So you plug it in. If it gives you a number, you're done. That's it. Okay, but here's one where it's not going to work as nicely as that. So let's give it a shot. So we're doing the limit as x approaches 2 of this. Okay, so first step, plug it in. Okay, so let's see if this works. So 2 squared plus 2 minus 6 all over 2 minus 2. And that's where you should see that there's an issue here, okay? But let's just work it out. Let's see what happens. So 2 squared is 4, plus 2 is 6, minus 6. That gives me 0, yeah? And then divided by 2 minus 2 is 0. Okay, because I got a 0 over 0, remember what that means here. I got it right here. If you get a 0 over 0, then you had a hole. Okay, so that looks like a graph that has a big hole missing out of it. And what we need to do is get rid of that hole. Okay, so if you're like, what are you talking about with a hole? I don't remember anything like that. Here's a graph. It's like at 2. Like, let's say this is what the graph looks like. I have no idea what it looks like. But let's say it looks like this, and there's a hole right there. Okay, now, but you can get rid of holes. Okay, well, let's say we just want to get rid of this hole so that it works. Okay, well, what we have to do is, remember what I said, you have to factor and cancel. Remember, I feel like some people are bad at factoring. This is a problem I have with my students, is they don't remember how to factor. They always forget it. If you're thinking about like what is factoring, I don't even remember that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this function right here. Here, I'll write it next to it here. X squared plus x minus 6 all over x minus 2. Okay, well, the bottom you can't factor. The top we can factor. We can separate it into the 2 sets of parentheses, if you remember that at all. Okay, so in order to factor, remember, you're going to have something times something. You do a FOIL, okay? And you know what? Maybe I can put together a little video, and I can put a video connection to a foiling to a factoring video right now. But x squared. So remember, you're going to put an x right here, and an x right here, so that when you multiply these x times x, it makes x squared. And then what you do is you look at your 6, and you say, well, how many different multiples are there to make 6? Well, we got 6 times 1, and we got 2 times 3. That's all you got, right, to make 6. So those are the only 2 sets of factors you can have. Well, what we want to do is we either want to put a 6 into 1 or a 2 into 3. Okay, so it's one of those 2 choices. It's kind of like a guess and check method at this point. Like, well, I got to guess, is it going to be 6 and 1 or is it going to be 2 and 3? Okay, but there's an easy way to figure it out right now, because this isn't a very difficult factoring one. I want it to be plus 1x, right? That's what just x means. That's the same as saying plus 1x. I want it to be 1. So what you can do is you can say, well, what can I add or subtract? Can I add or subtract 6 and 1 to make 1? 6 plus 1 is 7. 6 minus 1 is 5. 1 minus 6 is negative 5. It doesn't look like it's going to work. I can't make 1. So it's probably going to be 2 and 3. So let's think about it. Can I add or subtract 2 and 3 to make 1? Well, if I add them, it's going to be 5, so it's not going to be adding. But I can subtract them. I can do 3 minus 2, right? I'm not going to do 2 minus 3 because that would make negative 1. I'm going to do 3 minus 2. So I'm going to have a 3, and I want this one to be a minus 2. So this one's going to be a positive 3. That one's going to be a negative 2. And there we go. I factored it. And if you're like, I have no idea how this is the same as that. If you're like, that makes no sense. You can always go backwards to check it. Okay, so x plus 3, x minus 2. And if you're like, how do you go backwards? Remember, it's x times x makes x squared. X times negative 2 makes minus 2x. 3x times x makes plus 3x. And then 3 times negative 2 makes negative 6. And then if you combine like terms, if you remember that, those 2 x's can go together. So the x squared is just going to come down because it didn't combine with anything. Negative 2 plus 3 makes plus 1x. And minus 6 comes down because there was nothing to combine it to. And that is the same as the top, right? So that's why it was factored. Now we factored it. Okay, now remember what I said, okay? The rule is plug in the number. If you get 0 over 0, which we did, factor it and cancel. So that means something should cancel. Okay? And look at it. This x minus 2 can cancel with that x minus 2. And it leaves us with a new formula, x plus 3. So we're no longer doing the limit as x approaches 2 of this function. We're doing the limit as x approaches 2 of this function. And this function, x plus 3, oh man, that should be a 3. X plus 3 will look exactly like this function if you graph them. Okay, if you graph them on a graphing calculator, if you want to go online and graph those two, you can graph this function and you can graph this function, and they're going to look exactly the same. The only thing is going to be that this function has a hole in it. Okay? So x plus 3, and now we're going to do the exact same thing we did. Just like I said, factor and cancel. Whoa. Factor and cancel. Then plug in again. If you get a number, then that's the answer. So limit as x approaches 2, I'm going to plug in 2. And my answer is 5. I got an answer. I got a number. That's my answer. So the answer to this is 5. And we're done. Yeah? Okay, so let's just follow through those rules again. We're going to do one more that's just like this, okay? The limit as x approaches 2, we're going to plug it in. We plug it in. It gave us 0 over 0. 0 over 0 means there's a hole. We need to factor and cancel. We factored the top, and we did find something that canceled. We canceled. This is my new function that looks just like this other function. I need to then plug in again, and I get a number. That's my answer. Let's do one more of those, just like that, okay? So, remember, first step. Limit as x approaches 1, just plug in 2 times 1 squared minus 5 times 1 plus 3 over 1 squared plus 5 times 1 minus 6. Let's see what this makes. Okay, 1 squared is 1 times 2 is 2. So we got 2 minus 5, because 5 times 1 is 5, plus 3. Okay, so we got 2 minus 5 is going to be negative 3, plus 3 is 0. Okay, so the top is giving me 0. Now, what I'm hoping is if I'm going to do this, the bottom's not going to be 0, because if it's 0, then I have to factor and cancel. If it's not 0, the answer is just 0. Like if it gives me like 4 or something, my answer is 0. But let's see what we get here. We get 1 squared is 1, plus 5 times 1 is 5, minus 6. 1 plus 5 is 6, minus 6 is 0. Okay, I got 0 over 0. So I plugged in, I got 0 over 0. So that means I then factor and cancel. And guys, look at this. I have to factor the top and I have to factor the bottom. Both of these can be factored because they're both x squareds. Okay? So let's get to work in here. So let's set up my parentheses on the top, and I'm going to set up my parentheses on the bottom. Okay, here, let's do the bottom first. That one will be the easier one. Okay, so it's going to be an x and an x. Okay, because it's x squared, so when I multiply them, it makes x squared. Okay, then we look at the factors of 6. So we got 6 and 1, and we got 2 and 3. I'm trying to make that a 1. Okay, now this one's a little tricky one. It's one of the ones that fall into this because, okay, I need to make positive 5, right? And I can do that with both of these. So it's a mean problem. I have to check my answer to see if it works. Okay, so like I can do 6 minus 1 to make positive 5, or I can do 2 plus 3 to make positive 5. Okay, so what you can do is you can check both of them like how I showed you with FOIL rule. Or you can think about it, I need to make negative 6, right? So if I do, here, watch, let's write it out here. X plus 2, x plus 3. Okay, both of that makes positive 5 in the middle, right? And then the other one was x plus 6 and x minus 1, right? That makes x6 minus 1 gives you the 5, right? Okay, so they both make 5. But I need the end number to be -6, right? Well, if I do 2 times 3, positive 2 times positive 3, that makes positive 6, which would not make the -6. So we got 6 times the -1 will make the -6. So this is my correct factor here. X plus 6 and x minus 1. And guys, remember, if you're having some problems with this factoring, you can go online. There's a bunch of factoring calculators. Just know for the tests I'm going to have on lockdown browser, so you aren't going to be able to use a factoring calculator. So you need to know how to factor to a certain degree. Okay, so let's do this one. Now let's mess around with this one. So this one's going to be a little different. It's not going to be x and x, because if you multiply x and x, it makes x squared, right? We need a 2 on one of them. We need a 2x and an x. And that, when you multiply them, 2x times x makes 2x squared, right? Okay. Now, when I have one of these, it's kind of more of a guess and check. But my only factors are 3 and 1, right? Those are the only multiples that I can have to make 3. So it's either going to be a 3 right here and a 1 right here, or a 1 right here and a 3 right here. So watch, let's check out my 2 answers that I could have. 2x with a 3 right here, and an x with a 1. Or we could have 2x with a 1 and x with a 3, right? And we just need to figure out if it's going to be positives or what it's going to be right here in the middle, right? So I want it to be a -5 in the middle. Okay, I want it to be a -5. So what you would look at here is if, like, let's just mess around with this. Let's take guesses. Let's say this is a minus and a minus. I don't know. We're just taking a guess. Okay, if you were to check this, because the ones with the numbers in the front are a little harder. Okay, just warning you. So if you were to check this, 2x times x is going to be 2x squared. 2x times 1 is going to be -2x. -3 times x is going to be -3x. And then -3 times -1 is going to be +3. Okay, if you combine your like terms, that would make 2x squared. Okay, -2x minus 3x is make -5x plus 3. Okay, so is that the same? And it is. I randomly guessed, guys, and it came out to the right one. How about I do one that does not come out to the right one, so you can see what would have happened if you were like doing it yourself. So like, let's say you were doing this one and you're just taking a guess, and you're like, maybe it's a minus and a plus. Like, I don't know. And you checked it. So it'd be 2x times x would make plus, it would be positive 2x squared. 2x times 6, which would make plus 6x. -1 times x makes -1x. And then -1 times 3 makes -3. Well, that would, and then you combine your like terms, and you'd have 2x squared. 6 minus 1 makes positive 5x minus 3. Okay, and then you would have guessed this, and you would have been like, okay, this is what I get. It's a little different than my answer. I need it to be -5x, not +5x. So you would abandon that one as being the correct way of doing it, and you would try a different one like this one here. Okay, so that's what you would do. Now, guys, so let's just make sure we followed through what we did. We plugged in 1. We got 0 over 0. That means we had a factor, which we just spent the last few minutes factoring. Here's the factors. Now something should cancel. Notice the x minus 1's cancel, leaving me with 2x minus 3, and on the bottom x plus 6. Okay, remember, we are not done. Our whole point was to do the limit as x approaches 1. Now, like I said, if you graphed this function and you graphed this function, they would look the exact same. Just this one would have a hole at 1, and this one would not. So we're going to plug in 1 now and see what we get. 2 times 1 minus 3 over 1 plus 6. And that gives us 2 minus 1 is -1 over 1 plus 6 is 7. And there's my answer. If you want to write it as a decimal, it'd be -1 divided by 7, and it'd be -0.14. Okay, so those are your answers. So the answer to this thing is -1 over 7. Okay, and that's it. I hope you understood. Good luck on the homework. Contact me if you need any help. Okay, I am always willing to help. See ya.